90 minutes recorded live, uninterrupted. The Please Cast, episode 14, March 9, 2019. And I am your host, the Christian Internet Reporting. Co-hosting this evening by, as always, the Holy Ghost. And we are here with our friend, imaginary friend again, using our imagination friend in our minds, Jesus, always with us. And now, friends, we're going to get right to it. We have a very special guest host this evening. And as you know, we try to get to our special guest host very soon, early on, if we can. And this person we've met some time ago, several years ago, actually. I had an opportunity to meet him on the streets of Hollywood, California, friends. And I will tell you this, he's every single bit, as you will see on television, in real life. But he's even better. And now here he is, friends, a special guest host for the Please Cast this evening, brought to us tonight all the way from the Kingdom of Heaven studios in our imagination. And he's here with us now. And he's this person now. I'm going to go ahead and say his name, and then we're going to hashtag it, because we hashtag everything on the show. You know, here we go. And it's this, hashtag, and we're going to make sure I get it right. We're going to confirm it. Atelston Fitzgerald Holder the First. And here he is, friends, that guy. How are you doing, Atelston?
I am excited. First to begin, I'd like to thank you for having me on the show. I am flabbergasted beyond comprehension. So thank you for having me on.
Yes, man, what a privilege. I met you. I don't know if you remember all the people you meet, but I was doing an open mic of comedy at the Comedy Store in Hollywood, and I was there. It was my first time ever being down there, and a guy that I knew had told me, go down there and sign up for that open mic. But I met you, and you had on I never forget it, because you were almost dressed like I was. You had on a brown, kind of a tweed coat. I think it had elbow patches, or maybe I imagined it, with a bow tie and a puppet. Yeah, and we just hung out for a second, and you just were really chill and peaceful. And later I saw you on television.
Yeah.
And I said, man, this guy's crazy. I got to follow this guy on the internet and Facebook. So, but yeah, you lecture and you write papers and you perform comedy, and it's very unconventional, in many ways redefining what is the genre. So why don't you please tell us, Atelston Fitzgerald Holder the First, who are you, first of all, and what do you do?
Well, the fascinating phenomenon is, on my website, Atelston.com, there's actually a subtitle beyond my favor corner of my website icon, which states a conspicuous ghost of ambiguity. So what does that mean? Conspicuous ghost of ambiguity means I'm quite salient, I'm quite obvious. You can see every multifaceted aspect of my being, but yet I'm a ghost, because it's as if I don't exist, and I'm ambiguous. I have multiple interpretations. So that's what a conspicuous ghost of ambiguity means. Every facet of my being, every extension of my potency is quite obvious. You can see it extended in every different area. So who I am is quite clear, but then it's a kind of ghost, because it's almost impossible to put what I do into perspective. And a conspicuous ghost of ambiguity is quite self-explanatory. Ambiguity refers to triple or more interpretation, and in some contexts, human beings, we are biologically predisposed to absolute. We are either absolutists or we are either extremists or specialists. The mind has a conundrum grappling with the notion of, we don't believe that the human mind is capable of being just as proficient and efficient and having a high, strong level of potency in multiple areas. So, to answer your question, I'm a research scientist on one hand, but I'm also probably a performance artist in some other context. And 99.9% of my humor is really conducive to a contingent on exploring a number of different scientific phenomena, primarily in linguistics. One area of linguistics which uses literary devices, primarily figurative and rhetorical devices. So I'm exploring different ironies in my comedy. Dramatic, situational, verbal, tragic, or Socratic irony, which proceeds back to philosophical times. And how do I exhibit this? By exuberating different forms of devices like absurdity, satire, and all these different devices. And it's kind of quoted in the lowest common denominator in terms of humor, where it might be explored or exploited through slapstick humor. But anyone with any mild level of above average intellectual capacity would be able to see beyond the veil and realize that this stuff is carefully orchestrated.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's...
No, I think that is very clear. Let me tell you what I love about it. Here's a lot of what I base my feeling about words. I love words, and I love books, and I love everything about how they're made up, and literally, you see. And this, what you say, confirms this. But this idea of the conspicuous ghost of ambiguity, and that how this is actually a normal way of thinking, but people don't realize it. But I think it's the way it makes me feel when you talk about these things, because you can understand them. So you're producing a change in the physical body when your mind changes.
Yes.
And I can feel that. I can feel that when I'm hearing you deliver these lectures.
Yeah, because I'm coming from a epistemological, metaphysical, phenomenological perspective. And I've established a long time ago that I am not the source, I am an extension of. So this is what separates me from most radical materialists. You find it quite prevalent in the scientific sphere or industry. You find a kind of collective, radical, materialistic worldview. And I'm polarized. I'm like a partition into two opposing areas. So I'm a radical materialist. I could sit to the materialist that I could argue that we could debate on an infinitesimal level of the total, the neutrons bind together, forming the nucleus and falling miles away the electron. We could discuss every facet of all these different subatomic particles on the material plane. But I'm also a staunch idealist also, because from a materialist perspective, they believe that because of the physical body, the physical brain, the neuron finite between synapses, this implicates the emergence of mind, thoughts, experience, beliefs, and feelings. The idealists have a different philosophy. They believe that mind, thoughts, and experience is the fundamental substance in the universe. I embrace both areas. I embrace every facet of the scientific methodology in terms of logic, reason, evidence that they consider to be within the realm of scientific inquiry. And I embrace every area that science dismiss or invalidate with the same level of enthusiasm, because I understand that they're polar opposites of the same degree and they're contingent on each other. So you see? So I'm on your side of the fence in terms of spirituality and transcendental understanding, and understanding that there's more to reality that's outside the realm of scientific inquiry and understanding. And I can switch
Yes, I agree totally. I was raised a certain way of thinking, but from the time I was a child, my tendency to design that I felt was in me to function, like the way I was designed, the purpose I had was to question, to ask a lot of questions, and then to just keep pulling on threads, so to speak, until the sweater came apart. But it had to do, I guess, it came out in other ways. Some people will call it OCD, or, you know, it's a disorder. So people have these disorders that, and then they'll turn into behavior disorders if they keep you from doing other things that you've got to accomplish to reach other goals that you need to have your long-term goals, right? So if you can't, for instance, if you can't stop picking up and putting down a spoon with one hand, then you're never going to be able to eat breakfast to get out of the house, that kind of a deal. So I was that way when I was growing up. I had all of these behavioral disorder type, you know, so-called disorders, but they were made worse by people pointing them out and telling me to stop doing them. But then I realized now that I'm an adult that part of that is that it's just how I'm designed, but it always caused me to see the world in a different way. So that now, being a Christian, coming from being an atheist, I realized that I was only an atheist. I'm only an atheist when it comes to the Bible, I'm only an atheist when it comes to the way I was raised, because there's no such thing as whatever anybody's going to define as God, the way I understand that, as something that's going to be in a book. One book by a group of people on 1 century. And I feel, so I felt this way, but I felt the conflict of being a Christian and then honest about being a searching atheist. And embracing also, though, that part of my identity that I was raised with, very comfortable with, in fact, which is evangelical Christianity. So I use the language, and I have the, talking about words and code switching and all that. But then I also have the feelings and the moods that I get, the good comfort that I get from using that type of, that language and those types of repetitive behaviors. But then I also find that I have the post-traumatic stress symptoms will come out when I go and attend church, like a building. If I go to a building, then I have all these traumatic flashbacks from being a part of that, you know. So it's very conflicted. I have a very conflicted. I understand what you're saying. It is. I know I'm going to use this term, but I'm not using it lightly. It's crazy. I understand what you're saying. There's stuff out there. I read a book called Borderlands by a writer named Gloria Anzaldúa, and I highly recommend it. It's a pretty good read. It's not hard to read, but it's straightforward language about how people live in the borderlands between identities, and how the conflicts shouldn't be shied from but embraced, because there's a conflict. We're part of nature. But when I read your writings and I hear you speak, where do you speak, by the way? Because I'm sure you have a wide audience. You're doing a show tonight. You've done TED Talks too?
Well, I'm in the process of doing so. It's in the embryonic stages. One aspect of it is they find a lot of my content unanimously across the board, above average and resident to the mass. And on one hand, it was being considered as I watered down my material for the masses, which I refused to. So I'm focused and stuff. So my stuff I've been pitched for like the top 20 most prestigious universities across the world. And so I'm just look at it from your perspective. The same way you saw my work and you saw correlation connection between what I was doing and how it can integrate in your project is kind of how the same way others discover me, within the same kind of context. Seeing me as an asset or someone who could actually modify, augment, or be an extension to what they've already established, whether it's a talk show, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a live, a platform to lecture, or any different kind of arena. And I find it fascinating because the opportunities are, one, unpredictable. It's highly ambiguous. You can never anticipate what, like this, primarily this podcast we have in this radio show currently is unpredictable. I had no idea what I was walking into, but you were comfortable to not brief me, and I was comfortable not to be briefed because, again, I'm connected to something. When you listen to me, you know you're not speaking to an individual. I mean, I'm saying this in the most modest way possible. I am a vessel of something above and beyond me. So I always speak from that perspective. So my acknowledgement that I am not, I am only of, an extension of, I am only allowed the opportunity to enjoy the experience of something much higher and above and beyond me, and I allow this divine intervention to manifest, ordain itself through me, and allow me to permeate what needs to be said. So it's never about me. It's about me being an extension of, and using my platform in such a way to reach to the masses. So I may not use words and phrases and terminologies, like I would not say Jesus, I would not say Krishna, I would not say Rastafari, I would not say Buddhism, I would not say Allah, because society collectively and pervasively across the board have a sort of misconception, misperception, and misapprehension about these terms, only because they collectively have a perception of God based on how a collective religious group perceives this external divine intervention. So, being from that perspective, I understand that I have to use universal terms. I have to use hints. I have to carefully orchestrate my intellect, my lecture, and the way I deliver my information in such a way that to give a person clues, to send them in that direction, because I feel something of this nature, something so divine, something so extraordinary, something so synchronous, something so blissful. A man truly has to, it's a subjective journey, and a man has to attain this on his own. The best I can do is help him and guide him in that direction. But that force, that divine force in and of itself, that everyone attributes to all these different labels, a man has to find that on his own. When he gets there, he can call it whatever he chooses. But when he gets there, he will realize that the journey he takes, steps he takes, how he found this divine entity, he will realize that it's nothing like anything else that he ever perceived or what society perceives it to be. So it's a very personal journey, it's a very personal experience.
Yes, tell me about it. Briefly, I am qualified to speak on this on many levels, but one is very frightening. I had a experience with medication several years ago, well, within 10 years ago, but I had a misdiagnosis of a mood disorder, and they gave me the wrong medication, and then what happened was it made me, I'll tell you one thing it did though, it opened my eyes to a lot of stuff before it made me want to start stepping off of the top of buildings. And then, but the thing is, I realized when I got off those meds that I wasn't quite the same after that. And I had understood things and I had seen things and I had behaved in ways according to those things that I had seen and understood that altered me. So that I wasn't the same person, I was more of the same person that I had been before, but with less of the stuff that I didn't care about hanging on to my mind, if that makes any sense. And so I became very interested in learning about bipolar and why I should be, and I learned that it's just part of having a fabric, of a fiber, of a network of whatever it is that I'm of. And it's like orbiting patterns of the planets or these comets or whatever it is that goes through, and they're predictable in certain ways. It's just part of how things work, and I'm part of that same thing. And so when you say I'm not listening to one person, I understand that. I understand, or one thing. You're many things, but you're willing to be connected to that. How do you you have a what do you do to stay ready, fit, physically fit, mentally, all that?
I feel like it's a biological predisposition. It just seems innate. What others require teleprompter or rehearsal for, I seem to regurgitate effortlessly verbatim for verbatim. So at some given point preceding back to adolescence, I knew that there was something else emanated. And I like, we could have many subjects that we could discuss. We could have a scientific conversation, we could have a transcendental, a spiritual conversation, or metaphysics. We could go into many different areas. So we're probably going to go in and out, from science to areas that are considered unscientific. So I discovered something, and I discovered from this perspective, as long as what I am doing aligns with the highest good, the highest, most objective goal, right, which is to serve a purpose or some sort of mission, which is sort of vaguely inexplicable because I can't really put it in perspective. I just know that events, scenarios, and circumstances align itself in such a way where I could always position myself to deliver a kind of message that reaches to others, and it goes beyond the message itself. People begin to believe in something. They know something. They feel something. They suspect something. And I show up, and I give them a sort of affirmation, a sort of confirmation. And the perfect example, to perfectly embodies everything I've just said, you made a couple references to a number of different mental disorders. In the Western world, it's categorized in a number of different categories. You have psychopathology, which is mental disorder. You have pathology, which is mental disease. You have pathophysiology, which is a physiological processes of mental disorder. In one aspect, in Scientology, one of their books, Dianetics, Ron Hubbard talks about psychosomatic illnesses. Psycho, etymologically refers to mind. Somatics means the body. So in Dianetics, in Scientology, they focus on mental illnesses, the mind-body relationship, mental illness, which refers to the sort of dualistic, which is distinction between mind and body. And what you've seen in the Western world primarily is stuff like apophrenia, pareidolia, hallucination, delusion, psychosis, and schizophrenia. In the Western world, in the Diagnostic Statistic Manual of this mental disorder, these are all of the editions, right? This is what the collective of American Psychiatric Association attributes all these mental phenomena. They call it mental diseases. In the Eastern world, it's attributed to all different sorts of spiritual awakening. One of the fascinating and most extraordinary conundrum in all this is there really are no discernible qualities. Now listen to this carefully. There really are no physiological, and this is very important, everyone listen to this. There really are no discernible physiological, psychological, and emotional qualities between a person having a spiritual awakening and a person we attribute to having some sort of mental breakdown. Because apophrenia, let me break it down. Let me break down all these mental disorders. In the Western world, they attribute to a mental disorder, right? This is what the American Psychiatric Association attributed to. And who is the American Psychiatric Association? And I always say this. Patterns in nature are undetectable to the unimpaired and uninitiated. I'll say this one more time. Patterns in nature are undetectable to the unimpaired and uninitiated. So if you're not impaired and you're not initiated, how could you evaluate me? How could you diagnose? How could you want a prognosis of me? This is a fascinating phenomenon. So now let's look at these mental issues you mentioned. Apophrenia. The dictionary, primarily the Oxford Dictionary. Imagine it, right? The Oxford Dictionary, which is considered the historical and primary, right? Authority on language. The apophrenia is seeing patterns where none exist. People who are experiencing spiritual awakening, they begin to see patterns in nature, right?
Yes.
Pareidolia is is attributing all physical, tangible objects in reality to some sort of external divine intervention. So someone might see a cloud, and the cloud might depict a cross with Jesus. They attribute that to God. They call that pareidolia. So you have apophenia, you have pareidolia, right? You have hallucination. So hallucination is seeing and hearing what non-exists. But this exists. People who have people who have spiritual awakening, they actually hear God, right? They speak to God through lucid dreams. They attribute it to hallucination. Then they have delusion. Delusion is when you begin to believe in what you hear and what you see. Psychosis is when you lose touch with reality. Basically, you lose touch with reality when you begin to bathe. When you begin to dance in the synchronicity, you begin to bathe in the magic. You experience the Holy. In the Bible, they say the Holy Spirit. In the Bhagavad Gita, they talk about the bliss, which is the highest excitement ever. In the Western world, they attribute it to delusion. And then we have the last, the Alice in Wonderland syndrome, the Neo Welcome to Meet Morpheus, schizophrenia. It's straight down the rabbit hole. So what's my point for saying all this? People who are having a spiritual awakening have all these different physiological, psychological, and emotional attributes. No! There's something very, very important that I elaborate on this. There are exceptions to the rule. There are cases where people are really having these mental issues. People are really hallucinating. They're really having schizophrenia because maybe they were biologically predisposed and they take some sort of psychoactive or psychedelic drugs, and this sort of augment this mental disorder or disease that they were already predisposed to. So there are exceptions to the rule. I just think that unanimously across the board there's a misconception, and I think sometimes imagine you have a psychiatrist who doesn't believe in anything outside the material plane. He believes that everything that exists is the material energy of reality. Of course he's going to perceive your spiritual awakening or your sort of enlightenment to some external divine intervention to a mental disorder. It's such a misconception, and this blows me away because we don't have the right people to diagnose these individuals. I apologize. Does you see my point?
Oh, that's hilarious. Oh man! See, I could listen to that for 4 hours. I don't know. See, this is to me. That's good comedy right there. But it's real. You know what? That's really real stuff. Do you watch okay, now how do you watch anything or read anything other than what you're talking about, or do you take everything in that you encounter?
I don't, because ever since I discovered subliminal, hyperliminal, what's the other one called? Hypnosis, neuro-linguistic programming, which is abbreviation NLP, and cognitive behavioral therapy, I stopped looking at my television, period. Because, you see, awareness changes your perspective. I try to read as much as possible. And I try not to look at television. So I don't look at television, period. Because subliminal influences information that has the capacity to bypass below psychological threshold of conscious perception. So you are influenced, but you are not consciously aware of it.
So if I could jump in here on that a little bit, and here's my look at this, and it's I see you're talking about what's going on, and then there are other people talking about, let's say, like the difference between Mitt Romney and Barack Obama, just as for instance on television. I'm just saying, these are, to me, these are superficial issues that don't get to anything real. But I feel like truly what you're saying, what you're talking about is the reality. And there's a lot of programming. It makes me think of how Barack Obama, let's say, and Mitt Romney are very similar. They don't have, for instance, the same level of subliminal programming that I might have on my type of television that I get, whatever it is, on my basic cable. Because some people can go ahead and bypass certain other subliminally delivered messages because they can pay for just put it on simple terms, right? And this is what I'm saying. These are the simple things because they can buy less exposure to those subliminally provided messages. They can be taken to places without seeing anything they don't want to see. And so there are certain people that in our world, in our society, that can live outside of that to a certain degree, but then they themselves are all part of the system. And what you're talking about is something altogether different. But how did you realize to put it together in a way that could be articulated? From what age or where or what venue or even why? If you could talk about that.
At some given point during adolescence, my apology, I began to realize that this is some big existentialistic and epistemological questions. Like, how do I know? And I exist. How do I know that I exist? And from a metaphysical perspective, I began to see an extraordinary phenomenon. Metaphysics is a branch of philosophy that explores the relationship between mind and matter, substance and its attributes. And I found like my mind was doing something quite extraordinary. I couldn't put it in perspective. All I know that there was a domination between what I thought of and what occurred. So as I got older, I began to study this phenomenon. I decided to become a research scientist. And at some given point, I became an atheist. And at some given point, I just hovered. I just kind of like a sponge sucking up as much. I had no preconceived notion. I had no confirmation biases. I was more of a pragmatist. I didn't validate or invalidate. I just accept what came and I embraced it wholeheartedly. And I began to realize, I asked myself one question: well, if I can do, then others can. And if they are below, then they are above. We call it yin and yang, as above, so below. And as I got older, I got into areas like phenomenology, which studies the structure of consciousness, ontology, which is a branch of metaphysics, the subsets, the subfields, and study being, and specifically areas of psychodynamics and psychoanalytics, the interrelationship between the unconscious, the conscious, emotion, personality, and motivation. And during that time, I began to realize that one of the things I learned about the subconscious mind is governed by colors, emotions, signs, symbols, metaphors, and analogy, images, and archetypes. Archetypes and symbols. What's the difference between archetypes and symbols? Symbols are basically a representation. It's a graphical representation. Archetypes are basically those graphical representations that are embedded in the subconscious. So at some given point, I begin to realize that the physical plane we live on is just one reality. And I might exist here on a dense plane, but I asked myself the big question one day: how come I could never remember my dream? So I conjured up the idea that, well, maybe our memories exist on a different plane. And the minute I came to that awareness that memories exist on the other plane, I began to realize that there's other realities, there's other planes. And then I began to understand what subliminal influences are. Subliminal influences are kind of influence that works within your free will. So free will is the ability to take action, make decisions, and govern events that's in accordance and at the discretion of one person's motivation. But yet these influences work within your free will. So your free will and you're being influenced. And when I study subliminal, like subliminal is information that bypasses above the physiological threshold of conscious perception. One example is a coffee shop may set the room at a very specific temperature, right? This is related two things from a customer: to continuously buy coffee or leave the coffee shop. That's subliminal information that bypasses above the physiological threshold of conscious perception. But you feel the cold, but you're not aware why it's influencing you. Same thing with a wine store. Go to a wine store, and in cognitive neuroscience, they studied that appeal. So you could set these intervals a certain distance apart and create a sort of ambient song that entice and induce customers to buy. Another example is that's another example of subliminal. So when I became aware of all this stuff, how the mind works, how the conscious mind works, there was a sort of heightened awareness came. And then I began to realize that the acquisition of knowledge, you know, there's certain things I have to do. One is, they say will. What is will? Will is restrained impulsion, controlled exertion. So I use that methodology, and I say, so what's the first step I need to do to learn, to educate myself, to acquire this vastness of knowledge? I need to restrain my impulsion. Things like television gotta go. All these mundane, mediocre things that doesn't seem to do anything for my mind, I need to restrain from this. And I need to control my output. Because clearly, this mind is doing something. And if it's going to do something, I need to control it to do things in the most effective way possible. So I use that. And I feel that. And I focus it in areas that I think will have some sort of profound implication. Right?
What is your, yeah, you know what, you inspire me to, because I have to learn and grow, but I'm inspired to challenge myself with more reading. I have, now what is your favorite topic to read? Do you have a favorite topic to read?
Linguistics. I've been obsessed with linguistics my whole life. I think at the age of 9 years old, I heard a comedian said, he made a joke. He said if Iraq attacked Israel from the rear, would Greece help? And then he turned around and he said, well, I hope they don't attack Jordan because the capital is a man. Comedian, a West Indian comedian, right? It's profound. He said, I hope Iraq don't attack Israel from the rear.
Yeah.
If Iraq attacks Israel from the rear, would Greece help? He said, I hope they don't attack Jordan because the capital is a man. I spent years as a child trying to decipher that. It was profound. But it was like comedy and magic.
Mm-hmm.
And I discovered as a teen that to truly unravel the mystery, right, the phenomenon, the enigma behind humor is between linguistic models, because humor is contingent on the communication of language. So this is where I became obsessed with language, linguistics primarily, and every facet of its subfield: phonetics, phonology, morphology, syntax, semantics, pragmatics, applied linguistics, sociolinguistics, psycholinguistics, and the philosophical aspect of language. We could call it the philosophical aspect of linguistics. And why I like the philosophical aspect of linguistics is it studies specifically the linguistic model, the linguistic models we use, and the physical attributes, like the word cup and its attribution, the cup itself. Right. The relationship between these two, between the word and what it entails, is a level of arbitrariness involved. We could replace the word cup with the word spoon, and then that cup would become a spoon. That is a kind of arbitrariness. But at the same time, simultaneously, linguistic models are paradoxical. Because when we study areas like phonetics, we study the production of sound, articulatory, acoustics, and the auditory nature of sound.
Mm-hmm.
And phonology, which studies areas like intonation, inflection, cadence, and tonal modulation. We don't see that same level of arbitrariness, because we see when we look at words like yes, which is accepting, which is appealing, and when we look at word no, right, which is resisting, you can see preceding back to our primordial era and our Homo sapiens, our survival mechanism was sort of contingent on using these resistance kind of sounds, and these opening sounds like yeah, and this resistance, so very like a repulsion sound like no. So on one hand, you're seeing where linguistic language is arbitrary, but at the same time, you're seeing where it's governed by a sort of phonetical and phonological law. So I got obsessed with linguistics, because it's through linguistics I began to understand that a prime example is, and this is a joke I'm giving for the audience. So fire department was on fire, and they called 911, and 911 called them right back, right? So that's a joke, by the way. You're supposed to laugh. So
Okay, I did. I was laughing.
right. So it's by studying linguistics, I understand that that's situational irony. Situational irony is a contrast of what's expected or anticipated. Another example is, hey man, so I was walking along the street and I found a Visa credit card. Hey, but you know what? Now technically it's a discover. And you know, in studying in semantics, studying all the ambiguity, studying all the ambiguity, all the ambiguity. Semantics, homonym, homophone, homograph, heteronym, heterograph, polyphony, monophony, and paronym. I study every facet of linguistics. I have ambiguity, so I can know this joke is predicated on the semantic ambiguity homonym. So I became obsessed with linguistics because I felt like with linguistics now I could unravel, you know, what the paradox of the joke, the ambiguous nature of the joke, the surrealistic nature of the joke, the juxtaposition of incongruity, where you merge all the incompatible. So it became like obsession, you know. So linguistics was primarily was that thing that got me, was the driving force.
You know what I find? I think I agree. That's my favorite kind. There used to be a guy. You might remember this guy. I don't know if you know about him or not. Didn't follow many old. Old comedians, but comedians that were passed away. This guy was called. He was from. I think he was on Laugh-In in the '60s, and he was Professor Theo. And he had a whole deal where he would come out and deliver these kind of lectures. And he had a bit where he would act like he was looking at notes, pulling them out of his pocket. But he's an interesting guy. I've looked at him several times. I think his name is Professor Theo. But I have, words. Like when you talk about, they called him right back. See, I feel like. I feel like some of the best comedy is when there's no laughing going on or laughing or whatever. If the audience is engaged, it's all good. Because if they're paying attention, sometimes there's one joke, a friend of mine that helps me write a lot of the jokes that I perform, and he came up with this one, and that it's... some people, if you don't get the joke, don't worry. Some people say they don't get the joke sometimes until 2 or 3 days, or sometimes a week or two afterwards.
Yeah.
But then it's, by that time, you know, it's so satisfying because it's a joke. And then I feel that the kind of humor that I prefer, and so I feel most comfortably performing, is the kind that doesn't leave anybody out. And often the conventional punchline humor leaves a lot of people out. And it's just my personal preference when I started performing comedy that I wanted to do a kind of comedy that would literally not leave anybody out. Because people talk about the performer being scared. I was always the audience member afraid that I wouldn't think the joke was funny and not be the one laughing. That's crazy. I know it sounds weird. It's twisted, but as a performer, I find myself having more fun. And actually, if you want to gauge by the laughs, there's a lot of laughs too. But it's because I'm not trying to be funny. I'm just explaining things.
Yeah.
You know, I'm questioning and understanding things. And so when I read your work, your lectures, and I watch your videos, I am not only inspired, but I'm challenged to grow. So my reading time has gone way up, and my television time has gone way down since, let's see, I read a post on Facebook. You took a hike in the morning, and then you did some reading. An hour of reading? Is that normal for you in the morning, an hour of reading? And an hour of exercise, a hike or something like that?
No, I'm constantly in this space. What I do is I get up at 5 and I hike up a mountain. So if I do mountain catching my breath, because I figure if I could lecture climbing a mountain catching my breath, then speaking in a standing fixated position becomes an effortless process. So then there's the hike, and then I'll come back from the hike, then I'll go to the gym, and I'll spend a few minutes on the treadmill climbing stairs. Then I'll go and lift weights. So, and then 8 o'clock, I'm showered, and I'm ready. Basically, I'm ready to start my day. You know, so I have this philosophy, you know, exert the body. Strengthening the mind comes from exerting the body. And this is one of the phenomenon I discovered in terms of how to augment your lucid dream. Lucid dream is basically the ability to experience a semi-conscious state while you're passively dreaming. And it's really a dualistic phenomenon in terms of if you exert the body, exhaust the body, and strengthen the mind, so you sleep well, and you get up next morning and you exert the body. So your body is exhausted, but your mind is rejuvenated. So you fall asleep, the body goes into sleep, but your mind remains in a semi-conscious state. So what you experience is a controlled lucid dream. So what a person may experience once or twice a year, you could experience on a consistent basis, on a day-to-day basis.
Yes.
So there's a lot of things, like there's a lot of diet, no dairy product, no meat, because tends to make your body feel heavy, because we consist of material energy. We exist on the most dense plane that exists in the universe. And stuff like meat and stuff sort of holds it down. There's a sort of denseness to meat and bread. So I refrain from that, because if I'm going to go and speak on a stage for an hour or two, I need to feel as light as possible. So I stay away on any sort of stuff. There's two things I take into consideration: exercise and my health. And then the rest of the day is basically spent just I could spend an entire day brainstorming. I could spend an entire day on a single word. I mean, I spent 2 months. On premise and proposition. Premise and proposition are the two most important words in science, because all arguments, all logic, all reasoning, all hypothesis, postulation, all axioms, every facet of reason is centered around what we call syllogism. Syllogism, a conclusion based on two or more premise or proposition. So I spent a long time studying, the deep intricacies of premise and proposition, what they mean, why they use out of context, why they use interchangeably, why different dictionaries have different definitions, how lexicon come together collectively and give this definition based on the sociological interpretation of the word. So I cover every facet. So this is an exception to the rule, where you have two words primarily that sort of engulf every facet of my time, because it's two of the most powerful words in science: premise and proposition. Paradoxes, ambiguity, all of it derives from premise and proposition. Everything built from this, every reason, every logic. And I said, let's go down. So I got into these areas. I have spoken way too much.
Yeah, no. Listen, now I know you're busy. Now you're about to do even tonight for this program. You're booked all over the place, and I know that you're delivering an interview or a talk later on a program right after this one. Are you able to stay around for a few more minutes for a closing segment?
I have until 8 o'clock. Yeah.
Okay, great. So we have a few more minutes. Listen, why don't we take a break real quick, and then when we come back, we'll be here with a very special guest host, Atelston Fitzgerald Holder the First, and we're getting a free lecture. It's an education, a master's class online, friends. We'll be right back after this on the Please Cast. And we are back with the Please Cast, friends. And real quick, want to tell you what the Please Cast is, because also that because we're here with our very special guest host, friends. Remember, we have our very special guest host here, friends, Atelston Fitzgerald Holder, the first. And friends, he's giving us a lecture tonight on, well, the first we started out with Conspicuous Ghost of Ambiguity, and that's really who he is, what he is, very clearly stated. But he's here tonight, friends, with us. And I want to say thank you, Atelston, for joining us. How are you this evening?
Thank you for having me back again.
Yes, absolutely. I wanted to remind you also that we're going to be telling the audience what the Pleasecast is. And so go ahead and pay attention now, and you're going to learn as well. Now, friends, the Pleasecast is the following. Because we're doing something, friends. And it's this. Don't forget to hashtag it. And it's the Pleasecast is this, friends, because we're performing, learning, educating, advancing, serving, entertaining, friends, literally, quite. And then also, friends, along with the Pleasecast team, we're then performing, learning, educating, advancing, serving, entertaining, to engage and motivate. And then now, friends, wait, there's more. And this is all for this reason, friends. UN2G, and that is to say this, unto good works, and then finally in a more excellent manner. And we're trying to do that tonight, every night. We're doing it tonight, friends. Actually, it's been delivered in more than we can retain. Actually, we're going to have to share it with our millions of listeners. And he's this, friends, our special guest host tonight. Again, we want to say a very special Pleasecast welcome to our very good friend and our very great teacher. And we're pleased to have him, privileged, in fact, to have him on the show this evening. And here he is. Let's see, I almost got the second name first. No, it's Atelston Fitzgerald Holder the first. And thank you again.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, none of that is scripted, so I just got to let you know I don't write any of that down. That's I got to try to remember.
I never like script. I always me. It's organically expressed.
So we were talking over the break, but right before I wanted to say this is episode 16, friends, not 14. So, but I was so overwhelmed with excitement over having Atelston Fitzgerald Holder, the first on the show, that I got the time of the day, the number of the program wrong. I'm not lying about that's the truth. But the show program number is the 16, not 14, friends. Okay. But we were talking about how one of the ways that identity is formed in the mind, in the imagination. And my approach to some of this is thinking about that part of the mind where things begin, the origination of things, whatever you want to call them. Like you said, some people would say the Holy Ghost or not that or whatever. I would call that none of that is possible without imagination. I'm not concerned with the stories, whether they're real or whether this happened or that happened. None of it's real unless you have a good imagination. And if you have a good, and if you have a good enough imagination and you have enough people, let's say you even have more than one person, you have two people, and then those two people act like whatever it was that anybody was imagining is real or true, then guess what? It's real and true. And sometimes that ends up turning into a building or a bridge, right? Or a cup or a spoon in identification. But sometimes it means that people feel the need to do things to their outer bodies, not whatever they need physically, surgically to be who they are, but I'm talking about to please a certain way of thinking that they perceive as a way of thinking upon them, such as maybe I need to lose weight, or my waist needs to be a different shape, or I have to have my hair a certain color, or I can't wear facial hair, or I must have... You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about, surgery as far as what a person is or what they need. I'm talking about people trying to match a certain identity that's been put upon them. It's like the Rolling Stones I believe, he's not a real man. He can't be a man unless he smokes the same cigarettes as me or something like that. And so this goes on all the time, everywhere. And I feel that a lot of that just has to do with the way that we are taught through these signs, the symbols, and then, as you were explaining, the archetypes, but words even. And how would you say, can you talk a little bit about that? You were about to address that right during the break, and I wanted you to talk about your feelings about how identity's formed and how some suffering could be alleviated and how that actually causes people suffering. Some people might not care about it, and that's fine. I don't hold any grudges. I personally do. So what do you think about that, Atelston?
That's a very broad question. It's classified as a cross-disciplinary, a multidisciplinary, a transdisciplinary, and interdisciplinary analysis. Why for that question? Because we could explore that subject from a parapsychological perspective. Let's just explore mental phenomenon that's excluded or outside of that of orthodox science. We could take a psychological, we could even study it philosophically. Or we could take a materialistic, a scientific materialistical approach, or we could study this from a transcendental perspective. Transcendental perspective is the study of the nature of reality and the nature of the eternal, immortal being existing eternally in a perpetual cycle that constantly show up in this physical body and live a temporal lifestyle. Sometimes it could be an eternal cycle, an eternal. I mean, to really elaborate on this, and I'm not cutting it. When you look at the 5 Platonic solids, right? Plato cataloged the 5 Platonic solids, right? These are 5 sacred geometric shapes. So what's the difference between sacred geometry and regular geometry? They're the same. They're geometric shapes. They're a branch of mathematics that explore geometric shapes. But sacred geometry are basically recurring patterns that occur in nature. And by Plato cataloging the 5 Platonic solids, what he found that every facet of material energy, or every fabric, all of physical reality is made up of one of these 5 geometric shapes. You have the tetrahedron, hexahedron, octahedron, dodecahedron, and isosahedron. If I pronounce any one of these peculiar names wrong, don't hold it against me, audience. Now, to answer your question, we have to explain. The tetrahedron is basically a 3-dimensional equilateral triangle, right? But it exists in a 3-dimensional reality. It's a 3-dimensional equilateral triangle, right? This represents fire. Now, there's intuitive, metaphorical, and analogical justification for this association because the tetrahedron is pointy and it's stabbing, and fire is the same. Then you have the hexahedron. Hexahedron consists of 6 squares. So you have the tetrahedron consists of 4 triangles. You have the hexahedron consists of 6 squares. And then you have the octahedron. The octahedron consists of 8 triangles, right? One 3-dimensional equilateral triangle points upward. Another 3-dimensional equilateral triangle that points downward. You have tetrahedron, you have hexahedron, you have octahedron. The dodecahedron now consists of 12 pentagons. 12 pentagons. Pentagons are really shaped with 5 sides. And then you have the icosahedron, or the I can't remember the pronunciation. Icosahedron consists of 20 equilateral triangles, right? That represents water. Each one of these sacred geometric shapes are reoccurring patterns in nature, and they represent the 5 elements of nature: earth, fire, air, water, and the ether, or you could call it the expansion of the universe. I don't have to go into too much detail. What's my point for saying this is personalities kind of fall into that kind of context. If you want to look at it from a transcendental perspective or a spiritual perspective, we're looking at it from an immaterial perspective, outside the realm of scientific inquiry. Some people reoccur in a perpetual cycle, and they take on these same characteristics, these same persona. Why am I doing what I'm doing? I would rather go drink, I would rather go get laid, but I'm here. There's an inclination, there's an impulse, there's intuitive drive. And when you experience stuff like deja vu, like sense of familiarity, synchronicity, you fall into this strange kind of alignment where reality sort of reconfigures itself, and you begin to experience retrocognition, hypnosis, they attribute it to past life regression, which is memories of your incarnated self. Right. So all of a sudden I find myself in this place, man, I don't care about this reality. There's something else going on. I exist eternally. I'm doing it over and over. So this is perpetual. I'm here again. What is it? I need to find it. I need to do it. But then you find yourself. Let me ask you one question. How many situations have you been in where the situation was just so highly improbable? It was beyond synchronicity that you ask yourself, man, do I really have free will? It's perfectly orchestrated. And then you begin to realize that, is this something I've done before? Am I back to do this here again? So sometimes we might ask the question you ask. Sometimes the material plane and man become linguistic. Language is a man-made mental construct. Right? When you get into spiritual knowledge, subtle intelligence, transcendental understanding, and hyper-consciousness, which you begin to perceive a higher ordained reality outside the physical, mundane material plane, something snaps. You begin to realize that there's a kind of answer. There's a kind of answer that you don't actually find in books. And you don't really find it from another person. You find it from the source itself. It's something you download. When you connect with this source, the information is downloaded and it comes to you, and there's a kind of knowing. And then you find all the information and knowledge to validate and solidify it. So, reflecting back to your question, sometimes a person is just doing this recurring cycle. The same way I'm doing this, I've done it before. We have probably interacted before. We will look different, different time, different place, different circumstances. But it's the same cycle. I know it. I feel it. I feel it, man. And it's insane. It's this desire to do this over and over and over again. So when you get beyond the science and you get into different plane of understanding, transcendental, you start to study the immaterial plane. Right? You begin to hover over stuff. And you begin to have a wider understanding of things. And sometimes you can't really hold a person accountable because sometimes a person is in a place, a victim of their ego. Sometimes some people are predestined. They call them eternal liberated soul. They're unlike humans. They are here to liberate souls. They are not here to get jobs. They are not here to make money. They are just here to liberate souls. That's their only purpose. They call them eternal liberate souls. They come back here over and over in a perpetual cycle to liberate souls. Bring people alive. Bring people closer to God. Bring them closer. Because everyone's here. Everyone has the same desire. Everyone wants love. The soul is hungry. Everyone wants their soul to be ignited. Everyone wants to ignite the fire in their soul, to bring their spirit alive. The soul is hungry. Every human being on this planet is searching for one thing only, and that is unconditional love. The ability for someone to appreciate them without any expectation and any sort of reciprocity. Someone to appreciate you, someone to love you inside out for who you are as a person. No expectation. That's source. That's from the source code. And when you come from that place, all information is downloaded to you. Oh my God. I'm on a tangent tonight. Sorry.
No, that's great. I can. I'm hearing. I feel like I'm being connected to a vital resource, and I want to say, but now because at the end of the program, of course, there's a very special gift to our always special guest host. We always provide a special gift, but because this is a different type of a show. We're breaking all the rules tonight, friends. But I have, by the way, now this is the Please Cast, and we've got on the program tonight Atelston, Fitzgerald, Holder the first, and then thank you again for being on the program, Atelston.
Thank you.
Yes.
Actually.
And then now we're going to go ahead and say, but because I wanted to talk to you because I've written a book. I wrote this book a couple of years ago, And it had in it, but this is the gift that we always give our guest at the end of the program, is that book. So I usually don't talk about the book till the end of the show, and I say only what the premise of the book is. But since I started hearing you talk about this repeating, what I was getting at earlier about identity was how things are made normal by repeated behavior. And if you could look at certain things that are normal by just looking at that they're there. So if you said, why do we have for instance, why do we have homelessness? We would call it homelessness, right? But really it's not homelessness. It's home more or less is what it is. It's like this. It's like because you have people that are the homeless are actually the ones that are home more, right? I mean, their house. You can go down to Los Angeles, for instance. I'm sure you see them all the time, and they actually live. Their house is right there. They're living at their house. Their house is right by the freeway. It's in front of somebody's store. They have everything they need. They have their bathtub. You know, the way they cook, it's all there. And then once a year, MTV comes out and cleans them out, and then they come back 2 weeks later and they set up their houses again. But this is how they have. They're not homeless. They're home more. And then the ones that they say no, they're home more. No, they're home less. How many times do you think these guys actually spend at their homes?
Right.
And they got to be home less to have a home. And these guys, in order to be homeless, have to be home more. And the way we talk in our world is just crazy, because that kind of stuff just makes me crazy, how people just won't tell the truth. So somebody said to me the other day, so I wrote about this in my book, and my book is called, this is a Christian book, and I want to send you a copy of it, but I think what I'd like you to do is actually review it. But I said in the book, because the premise of the book is, it just bugged me, like why I had to write a book about something that hadn't been written, but I had to ask a question that I felt wasn't being asked. And the question I felt wasn't being asked was, what actually is society? What is it? Like, I mean, I know I've seen a lot of books and this and that, but I wanted to see if I could break it down. So I came up with this, and I always tell people, I didn't come up with this. A friend of mine helped me write the book, but I wrote the book. I actually wrote it, but also it came from a higher source. So I always say give credit to the author, but I have this premise that says that society is a set of rules, right? And that society equals the behavior of the members of society that is repeated over and over and over again. And it's based on this principle. Definitions, meanings, implications of things, where everything that is anything in society is based on a behavior that was repeated, and it's normal. So somebody said, well, why do we have homelessness, or why do we build in all these strip malls? And because it's normal. We have homelessness because it's normal. Because if it wasn't normal, we wouldn't have it. It's just because it's what we want. But there's so much I think about, and I feel that you're giving me a lot of keys to take it on a better discipline, to take more of that challenge on of completing these books that I've started and writings that I've wanted to complete. Because what I wanted to do is I wanted to annotate this first edition of this book. But, so many other things keep coming up. But when I see the work that you're performing now, I say, this is a human being that has the same amount of resources that any person on earth has in terms of air or ability to move around, all things being equal with mobility. And so I've taken that more seriously. But I wanted to tell you about that book because I very rarely do I meet somebody that I feel like is talking about the same things. But I know that you're speaking on a higher level, many higher planes up on multi-level. But what I'm saying is, in the cereal aisle, my book is basically about the person in the cereal aisle, talking about literally how you go from the front door to the cereal aisle and then out the front door again. It's that stuff is normal. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, congratulations, because publishing your book in and of itself is a task. And from what you forwarded, you have multiple. So, I mean, that is commendable in and of itself. To publish and multiple. So congratulations.
Yeah. But I wanted to tell you also that meditation is part of the key for my mental health, and I know that you meditate. And how do you meditate? Though I meditate with no sound, and I meditate while stretching.
Well, there's many different forms depending on your objectives. You have mindfulness, you have mindlessness, you have, I've conjured up a number of different meditative methodology to sort of augment, modify, and alter a few of my goals. If I have a desire, I may meditate specifically on those desires. See myself on stage, envision an audience of 5,000. Because one aspect of the mind is the mind cannot differentiate what's real and what's imagined. Right, this is a scientific fact. That's why a person may have a nightmare and they wake up and there's a physiological, psychological, and emotional reaction. Because the mind cannot have there are no discernible qualities because between what is real is what and what is imagined. And this is because of the limitation of sensory modality. Science have all these different jargon and verbatim. We call it auditory, which is a sense of hearing. We have optical, which is sight. We have olfactory, which is our sense of smell. We have tactile, touch, and we have gustatory, which is our taste. We have auditory, optical, olfactory, tactile, and gustatory. And then we have kinesiology, which is the motion, body in motion. So there's a kind of a limitation, right? And because we have this kind of, what annoys me the most? Every now and then I would lose my train of thought. You ever had that? You're in the middle of a conversation.
Yeah, all the time.
And it just annoys you. It's just the most awkward. What were you saying specifically when I made reference to the sensory?
Well, I was talking about how people are taught to think about things, such as, I was first talking about homelessness versus homelessness. And then I was talking about how people go into the supermarket and they go from the front door to the cereal aisle, and how the definition of anything in society is based on behavior. So you would say you would start with behavior, and then that behavior is repeated, and then that's what makes it normal. And it just frustrates me that I guess not frustrates me, but I guess that's part of the mission of the book, and part of my mission with this program actually is to help people learn to talk to each other. And for instance, you're coming at it from wherever you're coming at it from, and I'm talking a little bit more in the cereal aisle, I would call it, and you're talking kind of where the 747s are flying. But I feel like it's the same conversation, it's just different frequencies, but we're sending the same signals out.
Yeah, and this is why I work in areas of cross-disciplinary, because multidisciplinary is where you have to take many different areas into consideration. If you're going to explore areas like apophenia, pareidolia, hallucination, delusion, psychosis, schizophrenia, PTSD, ADHD, bipolar 1, manic episode, bipolar 2, hyperthyroidism. You have to take areas like parapsychological phenomenon, philosophy. There's so many areas, cognitive neuroscience, because when a person is going through having a manic episode, their brain, our brain right?
Yeah.
It's also holistic. A lot of these areas is very holistic. So sometimes a person may ask a question, and we may say, okay, we need to isolate this question. You want us to focus on this question? I mean, we could study this area.
Well, you know what? Actually, it just came to me what you were saying. It said, because you were telling me about the mind can't differentiate between real and not real, and I was asking you what you meditate on, and you said you were picturing what you wanted. So I wanted to hear more about that, because that's what I do. As I will picture myself selling my book, and I will picture people reading, because you know what, I want people to have the book, but I picture things that I want, and you just said that, so I want you to, that's what you were talking about, is how your mind can't tell the difference, and I got to thinking, man, nightmares seem so real.
But that is the answer I was elaborating on, and I lost my train of thought when I mentioned sensory, because sensory is limited. The meditation you focusing on is from the visual. Then you have the mindfulness, or we call mindlessness, where you just, because what's most fascinating about meditation is what you desire is completely irrelevant to what the mind does. If you try to focus on an apple, close your eyes and envision an apple, you would realize that you cannot hold that apple in your mind for more than a minute. So then you realize that mantra and humming and namme yo yenge yo and all these incantation and all these hymns and the repetition of words is really to train your mind to still the mind. When someone says focus on your breathing, all of these are centered around one objective only: to train the mind, to still the mind, to control your mind. So that's one aspect. So you have the aspect of meditation where you focus on your desire and manifestation. There's the other aspect where you focus on stilling the mind, training the mind to remain still. And then you have the other type of meditation where you allow your mind to wander and take off and let it go off, let it organically go off into all these tangents, and you just become an observer. You know, we could look at it from a transpersonal psychological perspective, you know, one that transcends beyond personal identity. So you transcend beyond the personal identity, and you become the observer, observing the mind within the meditation, chaotically taking its natural course. And then you have another kind of meditation where you call it the cognitive void, where you just close your eyes, and that darkness, you just stay into that darkness. You just stay into that cognitive void. And then something fascinating begins to occur when you stay into that cognitive void. Now, it's not visualizing, like you said, Sally Books. It's not me extending beyond my personal identity and observing my mind wandering and doing this stuff. It's not about training to still the mind, with mantra and focusing on your breathing. This one is about just staying into that cognitive void, staying into that complete dark cognitive void, you know. And then what you begin to notice as you stay into that void and you begin to self-hypnotize yourself, and you go into a trance-like state where the brain transitions from the alpha to the theta, or sometimes delta. Before you go into fall into sleep, you begin to realize that as long as you stay into that cognitive void long enough, you see that darkness turn into these complex geometric orbiting spiraling shape, and all of a sudden you begin to experience the inception, the introduction, the beginning stages of what we call a lucid dream before you fall into sleep. So there's so many things you could do with meditation, and like you said earlier, meditation is truly the source of it all.
I feel that, and I practice it. Okay, with this, I know a lot of people are. Some people aren't. I find meditation wonderful. Some people are uncomfortable with it because of the language, the feeling that they get. They're afraid of words, so they might be afraid of the word meditation. For instance, when I grew up, meditation, it was a scary word because we grew up in a certain type of church that taught that meditation had to be, you had to meditate on a certain thing, the Bible, or repeat the chants or the hymns of the church. But some other groups were meditating on other things, like they might be meditating on whatever, just transcendental meditation or opening up their mind. And this was very scary. So when people said meditation, you had to make sure you said, no, Bible meditation. Because this meditation, anyways, I said all that to say this. I think this is a wonderful way to even start my day, and I try to live my life in a meditative state. And I think it's great that there are many different ways to meditate. I don't think there's anything to be afraid of, even opening up your mind, but I want to try to have always a discipline to it, because I'm not into opening up my mind to things I don't understand. If I'm not defending.
My apologies. Sorry, go ahead.
No. It's because there are certain paths on let's say a journey path, and I will not feel comfortable doing or thinking or exploring certain ways of thinking because I don't feel I understand them completely, and so I won't practice them. In other words. But once I understand certain ways of thinking, then I'll feel more comfortable practicing them. Yeah. And that comes from years of being programmed with superstitions and feelings of not wanting to try new things because of just tradition. But I'm open to all kinds of practices and ways of thinking and doing, but I've never really tried to meditate on anything other than just, I guess, just positive outcomes, positive things in general, just positive things in general, like health or peace or just calmness. I feel very safe with all of those things to be meditating on. Yeah, I don't know if I made it more or less confusing. It's just, I guess, because I'm trying to, because this is, I have Christians that listen to this program. I try to be very honest about my own feelings, because there's a lot of Christians that simply will not try any meditation of any sort if it doesn't involve Bible reading. And I find that Bible reading can be very limiting, because you limit yourself to one, especially if you go and if you meet in a building once a week and you hear one person say the same thing to you every week, 52 weeks a year. That, to me, that is not how you expand your mind and you grow. That's not even how you have the stories that we see in the Bible, where people performing miracles and all these types of things. And they weren't sitting in a building, according to those stories, listening to a person tell them the same thing 52 weeks a year. They were out in those stories, and I tell people all the time, it doesn't matter to me if you believe the stories or I believe them. They're stories. And in the stories, these people were walking around literally raising people up from the dead, and they weren't living in a building somewhere. They weren't putting up parking lots and putting on Easter parades or Easter shows. They were literally walking around in the streets, just walking around, looking for people to talk to, helping people, feeding members of their church. So, I don't know. That's my deal. And so I always try to explain to Christians that are listening that, hey, I'm just an honest Christian. Like you said, I'm an honest person I'm an honest atheist Christian, seeking constantly, never stopping my groin, but I feel very comfortable with this forum and venue and platform. Hey, and if other people are uncomfortable with it, then I just tell them that they can take it up with the New Testament, because I get it all right out of there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think meditation is a wonderful practice, and any time I can learn more about it, I love to. And I find a lot of Eastern philosophy has helped me expand my way of thinking and find better health and better success in my life too, helping other people, as they call it, Eastern, as they call it, not Western. So, but thank you. I really appreciate everything that you've said on that topic. I guess the only thing I would like to say now is that we need to take one more break, and then when we come back, this will be our final segment. We have on this program, the Pleasecast. This is a very enjoyable program. Usually we have a lot of fun. Tonight has been absolutely off the charts. I don't even have a number on the meter here for this one. But Atelston Fitzgerald Holder the first, thank you for coming on the program tonight, sir and friend.
And thank you for having me. And I kind of wanted to elaborate snippets of what you said earlier pertaining to the Bible and the Christian listeners. To look at all of our historical ideologies, historical, biblical ideologies, primarily, all of them was a sort of personification and anthropomorphism of every facet of human emotion. When you look at Solomon, King Solomon was the exaltation of wisdom. A prime example where there's a scenario where he told there was an argument between who was the mother of a child, and he said cut the baby in half. Simultaneously, Solomon was the exaltation of wisdom, but he evoked over 70-something demons. So he was light and darkness because he was imbued with his power of God.
Yes.
When you look at Daniel in the lion's den, the bravery. When you look at Samson was an exaltation, an exemplification of strength. When you look at Abraham, not even, in fact, skip Abraham, go to Moses, right? Moses parted the sea, right? That was a sort of faith or belief that defies description. And Jacob, the exaltation of faith. And then you have Noah, the sense of knowing, the prophecy, predicting the future, precognition. So even if someone was an atheist or someone, I mean, there's so many stuff you could extract. I think one of the problems with Christianity is someone may say hypothetically, I'm not a Christian. Why are you not a Christian? Because I see how Christians operate. You see, so people have a misperception. People are defining God based on a collective religious group interpretation. And the reason I'm making reference to this is you see this also in yoga. People have this misunderstanding about yoga because you never really had someone to explain to them what yoga is. If someone came to me and said, oh, yoga, blah, 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 every negative connotation in the book, and I said to the person, oh, let me ask you a question. Close your mind here. Envision an apple here. Hold that apple in your mind. I said, do you realize I'm here? You can't hold it. Then that person realized for 10 seconds, you see? I said, for 10 seconds, you could not hold that apple in your mind. What does that tell you? It means that what you want has nothing to do with what your mind is going to do. You have no control over your mind. So you see, I plan to see. Now his perspective of reality, his perspective of meditation changed because someone legitimately who have a solid understanding, not these commercial spiritualists that run in the wrong society with yoga maps. Someone who legitimately come and tell this person, this is what meditation will do. You know what happens? His whole perspective changed. Because now we understand what this is, what this does. Many do it, but they don't. I'm done.
Yeah, man. I say this. Amen to that. I wish everybody would.
Hallelujah!
Yeah, you know, here's my other thing too. While we're on that, I said for years, even while I was going to church on the regular, and I was a preacher, and I still am a preacher, and I call myself an evangelist. And when I say I'm an atheist, I mean I'm only an atheist according to the Bible, the way I was raised. I understand that there's no such thing as a God and then one book, but I have always said this. You know, to go to a building once a week and for 52 weeks hear the same person say the same thing that it equals this. We're right and everybody else is wrong. For 52 weeks every year, that is not what we would. That's not right. That just people don't do that in any other realm or fashion or profession or anything. They just don't do it. And if they were doing that in banking or teaching or airlines or anything, people would still be pulling rocks up the hills that were square. So, anyways, that's my deal. So I do a lot. My comedy, I call it Christian comedy because it literally is based on Christians' behavior only. I'll talk about myself first. So, okay, now we're we're going to go ahead and take a break real quick, and when we come back, we'll be back with the Gospel Hour, because we've said here, friends, we've said it before, we're going to repeat it quickly. The Gospel's finished. Nothing to see here. It's all been taken care of. You can go on about your business. You can go on about your business, and so as we are, we'll be back for after this in just a second with the Please Cast. Hold on. And we are back with the Please Cast, the segment of the show, friends, the Gospel Hour, Gospel section. It's finished. And I want to thank the special guest host tonight. As we've said, we've had to speed much of this along, but we're very grateful and proud, in fact, to have as part of our family now. He's only a guest host one time, and after that he's going to be a co-host if he ever comes back, which we hope he will. And that is Atelston Fitzgerald Holder the First. And welcome, and thank you again for coming on the show. And what do you think? How did you like it?
Thank you for having me. My appreciation defies description, and I look forward to another one of these opportunities. You know, without these platforms, I'm nothing. So it's an equal exchange. You know, it's a sort of equilibrium, balance between two different forces. You know, I need you, you need me, we need each other. So thank you. Thank you. I truly appreciate this opportunity and the ability to elaborate and explore a number of these different areas. And it's beautiful to know that there's platforms out there that appreciate or embrace this kind of awareness.
Yes.
You know?
One question also, how do people get, if they want to get you for a lecture, or they want to get a hold of one of your papers, or they want to see what you're doing on the internet or wherever, how do they find you?
Atelston.com. www.atelston.com. That's A as in apple, T as in Tom, E as in egg, L as in Larry, S as in Sam, T as in Tom, O as in onion, N as in Nancy. Atelston.com or MrPregnant.com. MR, Mr. abbreviated, no space, no slash.
Okay.
Pregnant as baby.com. Either one of these websites will redirect you back.
Got it. Great. Well, I know that you're Atelston. You're about to do an interview, and you've gone over with us. So, I want to tell you that we're going to go ahead and get you a copy of that book. This is a Christian book. And I want to say that everybody check out www.atelston.com, and we'll link it on the video. And then, Atelston, thank you again for being part of the Please Cast.
And thank you. Thank you for having me.
Great. And we'll see you all next time on the Please Cast. And don't forget, this was episode number 16, not 14. Bye, everybody.
Do you struggle? I mean, if you think about it, everyone struggles at some level, but what we want to do is address an issue. There are many Christians who struggle, and they struggle alone because of the fact that they suffer, whether it be physical ailments, whether it be anxiety, depression, just stress of life. So many Christians struggle with suffering, and yet they do it alone because most of us are too ashamed to let others know that we're struggling. We struggle alone because we think that there's something wrong. As Christians, we shouldn't be struggling at all. We should just have the answers, and yet that's not the case. There's many of us who struggles, whether it be within our marriage, whether it be with our children, whether it be with physical ailments. I want to let you know of a conference coming to Freehold, New Jersey to help with this. It is called the Sanctification Through Suffering Conference. It is going to be held at Chinese American Bible Church in Freehold, New Jersey. You can get all the information and the speakers. The speakers will be Justin Peters, who, if you know him, you know he struggles physically, Frank Mullis, Colleen Sharp, and Joe Suazo. And we will have this conference. You can get all the details and register at strivingforeternity.org/conference-on-suffering. So it's strivingforeternity.org/conference-on-suffering. Get all the details, and I hope to see you there.
This podcast is part of the Striving for Eternity ministry. For more content, or to request a speaker or seminar to your church, go to strivingforeternity.org.